Welcome to The Debate. So today we're digging into Mike Bellafiore's teachings, and specifically his foundational philosophy of the one good trade. What's interesting is how the source material consistently frames trading as, well, as more than just a financial act. It's an internal commitment, almost a philosophical path defined by this really intense discipline.
That's right. It forces you to look inward, doesn't it? It shifts the whole focus away from, what the market is doing and squarely onto the character and the temperament of the trader. The P&L, it suddenly feels secondary to the process.
Absolutely. And that shift, I think, leads us right to our central question for today. Does long-term, sustainable success in trading really hinge on this internal, psychological mastery and ritual, the deliberate training of the mind? Or is it ultimately determined by these external, quantifiable systems, the statistical edge and rigid risk management? I mean, where's the real leverage point for longevity?
And that tension is exactly where the source material gets really interesting, and I think that's where we need to look. I mean, where does the actual point of failure occur for most people trying to do this?
Well, I'm going to argue that the internal discipline, that control of the mind and treating the trade as a devotional process, I think those are the absolute irreducible foundations. Without them, no external system, I don't care how mathematically sound it is, can possibly survive a market shock or just a simple emotional outburst.
And I'll be coming at it from a slightly different angle. While the mind is clearly a factor, of course it is, I'm going to argue that it's the measurable things, specifically ironclad risk management and a mathematically proven edge, that are the ultimate determinants of survival. At the end of the day, longevity is the definition of success in this field, and that is achieved through external system adherence first.
Okay, so let's unpack that. That foundational claim about the internal struggle. The source material is, it's so explicit that the greatest danger to any trader is internal. Without control over your own mental state, the market just becomes a mirror, It just reflects your own fear and your own greed back at you. Principle 2 lays this out perfectly. Your biggest enemy is your own mind. It's the mind that overrides the system. It's what forces those premature exits out of fear or pushes you into overtrading because of expectation. So, success, then, isn't determined by external volatility, but by how you manage your internal state during that volatility. And to counteract that chaos, Principle 3 requires that we treat the trade with a deep devotion, a discipline. It's like a committed practice. This means rigorous pre-market prep, sticking to your setups, and these post-trade reflection rituals.
The goal, as Principle 10 really emphasizes, is not to chase a single winning ticket, but to become the person, the disciplined ascetic, if you will, who consistently makes good decisions no matter what the day's immediate outcome is. The internal character is the real output.
I see why you emphasize that. I do. That internal journey is compelling, but let me offer a hard counterpoint. The value of discipline is only realized in the disciplined application of rules that protect your capital. The devotion, the ritual, that's all well and good, but it has to serve the science of longevity. Survival is not a philosophical goal, it's a mathematical one. And Principle 8 makes this abundantly clear. Winning is not a big deal, surviving is the biggest deal. The material points directly to the necessity of the 2% rule of survival and setting a maximum loss limit. These are external mechanical guards placed against that internal enemy. I mean, these rules exist precisely because we know the mind will fail. And look, we can't ignore Principle 9. Edge is everything. Otherwise, you are just part of the crowd. The mental game only matters when a statistical advantage is actually present. Filtering out the noise, as Principle 5 says, and waiting for a setup that's confirmed by price action, volume, VWAP. That is what separates a calculated attack from just emotional gambling. The system, the hard data, it has to come first. The discipline just ensures the system is followed faithfully.
And that tension between process and outcome, I think it brings us right to how we even define a good trade. I maintain that Bellafiore defines it purely by internal compliance with the plan. Principle 1 tells the trader to focus on the process, not the profit. A trade is only considered good if you can answer yes to 4 critical questions. Did I do the research? Did I plan my entry precisely? Did I set the correct stop loss? And crucially, did I control my emotions through the whole thing? This structure, it intentionally makes the financial outcome secondary. I mean, think about the story of Arjun, the trader who just struggled to define what success even was. He finally had this breakthrough when he stopped reporting his P&L and instead was able to just sincerely say, "Today I took a good trade, Mike." And he could say that on a day when the position was flat or even a little negative. The second he prioritized his own character development, that internal discipline over the result, that's when he found the foundation for long-term success.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that definition as complete. Not for professional trading. I mean, let's say you rigorously follow those 4 steps, but the underlying setup you chose had, I don't know, a 50-50 win rate, and your risk-reward was poor. Was that truly a good trade? Bellafor isn't teaching people how to be happy losers. He's teaching them how to be consistently profitable survivors. If you rely only on process, you're ignoring the absolute requirement of Principle 9's Playbook Edge framework. A good trade must have a statistically confirmed edge proven by back-tested history, clear triggers, robust risk-reward before you even think about execution. The process just ensures disciplined execution of a proven system. The system, the edge, it has to logically come before the character assessment. You can be the most disciplined person on earth, but if your system has a negative expectancy, you're just going to lose your money slowly and methodically.
That's a compelling argument for the math. I'll give you that. But I would frame the relationship differently. A brilliant system, your proven edge, is utterly useless if the mind is governed by emotion. The internal discipline is the necessary prerequisite for system fidelity. Principle 6, expectation kills, execution saves. It highlights the exact moment that internal vulnerability just completely overrides external brilliance. Think about the story of Jack again. The guy was hyper-talented, a genuinely brilliant analyst who developed excellent, statistically sound systems. His downfall wasn't a lack of edge. It was his inability to detach from a specific expected outcome. When the market moved against his anticipated $500 profit, he couldn't handle the emotional stress of losing that money he already saw as his. He deviated from his own mathematically proven plan because his expectation destroyed his ability to execute.
The detachment from the profit you want is the psychological key that lets a trader stick to the plan even when it hurts.
The Jack story is powerful, I agree. And it perfectly highlights the problem. The mind is the enemy. But doesn't that prove my point about needing an external mechanical defense? If expectation is the enemy, the most reliable defense is a rigid mechanical system that removes choice, especially in moments of stress. If the mind is naturally chaotic, then the most effective way to manage it is through those rigid external controls. The question isn't whether discipline is needed, but how do you enforce it when the emotion hits? The source material shows that the value take every morning, Principle 4, today I will not overtrade. That's a fixed external rule. It's designed specifically to silence that emotional, hungry mind. Jason, for example, took 17 trades in a morning out of pure boredom. That internal compulsion was only solved by the external structure of adhering to a predetermined limit on his number of trades. So the internal psychological problem is solved, or at least mitigated, by an external fixed structure.
Okay, I acknowledge the utility of those hard rules. I absolutely do. But I would insist that the commitment to the rule is the ultimate test of character. Why do max loss limits even exist? It's because we are prone to irrational behavior when we're losing. Principle 3 reminds us that if you don't possess a deep conviction, a bhakti, a faith in the process, the ritual just becomes an empty exercise. It's a fraud. The hard limits only work if the trader respects them enough not to move or just ignore their stop loss when that emotional revenge trading or ego trading kicks in. The difficulty lies in that internal moment of decision. Do I respect the red line I drew, or does my wounded ego demand I double down to prove the market wrong? The external rule collapses the moment that internal control fails. If the conviction isn't there, the boundary's meaningless.
I agree that character is tested then, but the consequence of failing to apply the quantitative rule is absolute. It doesn't matter what the cause was. We have to look at the stories of total annihilation. Take Aditya, the IIT graduate.
The guy clearly had intellectual brilliance. He turned 5 lakhs into 9 lakhs in 3 months, a huge statistical win rate. But he lost all of it in 1 week because he abandoned risk management. That's not a failure of character first. It is a failure of capital science, which is completely unforgiving. He may have had a psychological moment of weakness, sure, but what killed his career was the immediate, quantifiable reach of the max loss limit and the 2% rule. Capital protection isn't just a healthy habit, it is the science that underpins the whole endeavor. If the capital is wiped out, the psychological lessons are worthless because there's no platform left to execute them. Surviving, which is purely a function of quantitative risk rules, it has to be primary because it's the prerequisite for all future discipline.
That is a compelling point about the finality of losing your capital. And I agree, Aditya's story is a profound cautionary tale. But let's look at the root cause of that failure, because I believe it ties right into the psychological temptation of avoiding the long road, our third contention. Aditya's success, it fueled his ego. It tempted him to take shortcuts and abandon the rigorous testing and conservative scaling he needed. Principle 7 addresses this head-on, the temptation to bypass the learning curve. I frame the rejection of shortcuts as a commitment to the long-term lifestyle of disciplined growth, the willingness to learn, test, master one single system for 90 days, instead of chasing some 5-minute Instagram hack. That demonstrates the fundamental importance of patience and intellectual honesty, which are inherently psychological disciplines. You have to commit to the slow, boring work.
I'd argue that rejecting shortcuts isn't just about psychological patience. It's a necessity of rigorous data verification. Shortcuts are rejected because they lack the necessary statistical backtesting, not just because they're somehow morally dubious. Principle 7 explicitly states the requirement: test at least 50 trades. This isn't a vague suggestion, it's a mechanical mandate. It means the trader must systematically gather data to verify the edge before engaging capital. This requirement for rigorous testing is what prevents the emotional impulse toward easy profit. The system demands objective rigor, and that rigor imposes discipline on a naturally impatient mind. The patience serves the statistical validity, not the other way around.
I'm not convinced, because the impulse to take the shortcut is purely mental. It's rooted in that desire for immediate gratification, for avoiding the hard work. The data requirement is only relevant if the trader has the mental fortitude and, frankly, the intellectual honesty to engage in that testing process for 90 days. The failure to test is a psychological failure, a lack of commitment to the process itself. The math is only as good as the mind that is willing to collect it and respect it.
But the system provides the metric for that. If the mind says, I want quick money, I don't need to test 50 trades, the system immediately answers, your idea is invalidated until you meet the 50 trade minimum. The structure forces to hand. The rigorous methodology provides the framework that keeps the naturally chaotic mind within bounds. I mean, trading is about making decisions based on probabilities, and those probabilities have to be externally verified. Otherwise, you're just gambling with expensive mental fortitude.
And the mental fortitude is what allows you to survive the inevitable drawdown that follows those first 50 trades, ensuring you even stick around for the next 50.
We're circling the same essential point, but emphasizing different levers of control here.
To summarize my position then, the ultimate foundation for success in this material is built in the internal struggle, that continuous management of fear, greed, and expectation. Long-term success flows from establishing trading as this disciplined, high-conviction framework. It's reinforced by Principle 10. My trading is my identity. If the mind is weak, the strongest external rules will inevitably be ignored or broken the second the market applies real pressure. The internal integrity dictates the fidelity to the external system.
And to wrap up my perspective, longevity in trading isn't an act of character, it's a math problem. And it's one that's solved only by adhering to external constraints. Survival, grounded in strict, quantifiable rules, the max loss limit, the 2% rule, rigorous edge verification, is the highest priority because it ensures a platform exists to learn. The system provides the necessary framework, the mental model, that prevents the emotional mind from self-sabotage, ensuring the trader stays, as the book says, alive long enough to learn how to be right.
It seems we agree that trading is certainly not about luck, but about the disciplined application of principle. Bellafore's philosophy really presents success as this secure world that requires multiple essential keys. And I think the ultimate lesson here is that losing even one of those keys, whether it's the key of mechanical risk management or the key of emotional conviction, will keep that world firmly closed to you.
Precisely. The trader has to achieve a successful synthesis of the two. They have to commit internally to being this process-focused devotee, but that devotion has to be directed toward respecting the hard external reality of statistics and capital. It's the combination of conviction and calculation.